Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Sup/x/files. I have struggled with poor sleep and sleep paralysis for probably 9 or so years. At first, I would have a sleep paralysis episode once or twice per year, and then I'd have them once every couple months. Finally, it came to a head maybe 3 or so months ago, and I was having them every week. I have gotten visual hallucinations, and I always get audio hallucinations, almost always the sound of footsteps, but sometimes spoken words. Once it was the moist slapping of barefoot steps on hardwood at a normal pace, and then a brief pause, and then again at a much more rapid pace, which was unnerving even though I have mostly replaced the feelings of terror that I used to get with feelings of irritation. Unfortunately, due to the weird fake sleep state affecting my memory, I don't remember any specifics of any spoken words, but I do know that sometimes it was ominous and threatening, and sometimes it was merely a greeting. For visual hallucinations, I have gotten the following. A person-like silhouette, except the shoulders simply taper up to a triangle-like peak. A dog silhouette, but the face was a featureless cone. A black and white perfect recreation of a roommate I was living with, crawling on top of me in my bed. Another of the same thing, with a different future roommate, simply standing a few feet into my doorway. Long, long ago, before I ever had my first episode, I read on this very board that you could end sleep paralysis by holding your breath. I have found this to be true, but it takes 40 to 50 seconds of holding my breath, which is quite unpleasant. And often I slip right back into sleep paralysis anyway, and end up doing this 6 to 8 times before I fall asleep for real. Recently, I have tried just toughing it out and letting myself be paralyzed, and I have had fascinating out-of-body-like dreams as I slip into the fully asleep state. I'm interested what beliefs and perspective you fine folks will have on the matter.
My two experiences were extremely short, but definitely strange. I never really had sleep paralysis as many describe it, but I had only 2 dreams in my life that I can remember where I was just lying on my bed with a sense of dread, and I couldn't move my body easily. In the first one, I was having problems sleeping in my uncle's house, and after finally being able to catch sleep, I opened my eyes and I looked around. It looked pretty damn similar to the room I was in, but it had slightly more illumination. All lights were off, with only the dim light from behind the curtains and the air conditioner illuminating in real life. I then tried to move my head, but it felt extremely hard. I could barely move it. Then, out of pure willpower, I was able to move my arms, and while they didn't have full strength, I decided to use them to help my head move faster, and it worked. But then, I woke up. The second lasted only a moment, but the lights were on. I suddenly realized I couldn't move my body and freaked up. Now this last time, not even I'm sure if it was a dream, or I just somehow didn't fully take control of my body once I woke up, because I don't remember seeing any difference when I woke up.
The first time I had it, I was taking a nap after school and hit my head on a dresser in my dream. I felt the pain from it in my dream, along with immense head pressure and buzzing that sounded like static. I woke up eventually and couldn't move, scream, or do anything. I had it a few times after that, not for a long time. It's scary, but not as bad as night terrors, which I feel are different. The first time I saw a shadow creature, it was standing over my bed, wearing the hooded robe with red eyes. The second time I saw it, it was laying on my desk across the room. I yelled at it to get out, and I never felt so scared in my life. I was shaking, apologizing because I could feel its anger. These things are pitch black, by the way, darker than any darkness. I stopped seeing it for years, but then one night I dreamt that I was in a hospital looking at some girl that I knew in my dream, but not real life. All of a sudden the lights went out in the hospital and she said, "He's coming," and then she died. I felt that same fear again, but didn't see it. Terrified me. The last time I remember feeling its presence, I was dreaming I was on my grandmother's street, and out of nowhere, a pitch-black portal-like door appeared in the road. It was calling to me to enter, but I refused and woke up. I'm pretty sure it follows me, as I've had shared experiences with an ex-girlfriend a long time ago. I told her we were going to wake up at 3:14, feeling uncomfortable, and she laughed. We fall asleep and I wake up, 3:14. I turn to look at her and she's staring at me, frightened. There was scratching on the door, which sounded demonic. We both hid under the blankets and went back to sleep. We broke up soon after. This was 2012. And I still think about asking her if she remembers that. A few months ago, I woke up in the middle of the night to my girlfriend speaking in what sounded like demonic tongues while growling and snarling. I hate sleeping.
My night terrors have always revolved around waking up in what feels like another dimension. Everything around me is usually normal, but I know I'm no longer in the same world as the one I fell asleep in. And worst of all, no one knows where I am, and no one knows I'm gone, as if my body still existed in the original dimension, but my soul, for lack of a better word, had transferred somewhere else. During the night terrors, I have had 5 types of hallucinations, each of them only once. Abstract light map on a wall telling me that I'm in another world, and that I have no way of contacting the people left behind. Everything appears vertically inverted, as if I was walking on the ceiling, infinitely repeating voices that change in pitch and repeat faster and faster. Micropsia. During night terrors, I'm also extremely suggestible, and I keep repeatedly asking who and where I am. I used to get these episodes randomly, but in my adulthood, I've only experienced these after several days of no sleep.
I've read a few posts regarding this subject here on /X, and I've shared some of my experiences. It's a subject I'm very much interested in, so thought I'd document some of my experiences and how it all really started. This will be spread over several posts as there's a lot to it. I've had a lot of episodes of this, but I'll do my best to stick to the most interesting ones. I'd say there are 3 distinct stages or phases to my personal journey with this. So I've written it out into a text document, and I'll break it up into sections and post them. Only interested in genuine experiences, silly troll responses will be ignored. Phase 1. Beginning. I was around 18 or 19 when I first had sleep paralysis. It was probably about a month or so later and scared the crap out of me. It began as it often does with a waking dream. My dream began with me laying in bed thinking I was still awake. I noticed the walls seemed very bright in my room. It was dark to begin with, but the room was suddenly glowing. Not really bright, but everything seemed cartoony or technicolor. I heard a click and looked round to my left, and there was a white-skinned, skinny being with huge, round, black eyes. Almost looked like he had aviator specs on, really big and shiny black eyes. But he wasn't menacing and made a weird clicking sound similar to the Predator. For some bizarre reason, I wasn't scared until I noticed he had a shopping trolley. Why, I've no idea. And this, for some reason, was the thing that terrified me most, because it then dawned on me, why the hell is there a shopping trolley in my room? This ain't normal. Suddenly I woke up and the room was dark again, but I couldn't move. But I could still hear that clicking, but it had an unusual echo to it, almost like it was coming through a big plastic tube, if that makes sense. Ever hear a cracking or clicking sound echo through a long tube? Or even a voice? It has a strange quality, like that. It's difficult to describe that sound, but I can still hear it in my head. This went on for a few minutes before I was able to start moving my legs and fully awoke. I sat up all night wondering WTF I just experienced. This is the only one I've had that I remember. Had a clay baboon I made in 9th grade art class. 10 years later, sleeping on the bed, the baboon next to me on the table. Wake up, but can't move. Open eyes, see baboon. But he's huge, ominous and terrifying looking, like the size of a big man at least. Finally, I woke up, realizing I've been looking at the goddamn 8-inch tall clay baboon the whole time. It was terrifying, though. Guess it's not very exciting, but goddamn. This same thing happened a few more times, but less eventful. No being or entities, shopping trolleys, just paralysis and odd sounds. This would come and go. I'd have it maybe 2 or 3 times a week for a month or so, and it'd go away for months, years. Early 20s, it kind of stopped. I probably went about 3 or 4 years without an episode. It was mid-2000s when I hadn't experienced it for a while, and I came across a website that had a thread about it. It was my aha moment where I figured out what I'd experienced all those years ago. Phase 2. Familiar terror. I was in my late 20s before it happened again, and it caught me off guard. I'd forgotten about it. It again began with a waking dream. I was in bed and really needed to go to the bathroom, but for some reason there was a fear about it, like I was scared of something. I lay for a while and was warm, sweaty, and getting desperate, so I got up and went to the loo. I'm standing there, urinating. Next thing I feel like there's someone behind me. Man, this creeps me out even writing about it. I turned round, and floating directly behind my head was my pillow, and it was glowing ultraviolet like a black light. I immediately screamed and it stopped glowing and fell to the floor. I had my back to the wall, never taking my eyes off my pillow, which was on the floor, motionless. I ran back into my bedroom and closed the door behind me, got under the sheet. Just as I went to hide under them, I saw the door open, then close by itself. Then I woke up, and I was soaking with sweat, unable to move. Then I hear the clicking, and every click feels like it's right in the center of my head. Every click generates this intense, almost enjoyable feeling in the center of my head, and each successive click is more intense than the last. Part of me wants to let go and enjoy it, but part of me is terrified that the intensity is not good. The more intense it gets, the more terrified I get. It's almost as though I'm anticipating a final click and buzz that will kill me, and I'm struggling to move. I can't. Even worse, I start to hear shuffling sounds in my room, not from one spot. It's moving, 1 second on my left, next on my right. I eventually managed to move my legs, and again I'm out of it, and I'm absolutely terrified. This was the worst I'd ever experienced. Weirdest thing of all, once I was fully awake, I noticed my pillow wasn't there. It was gone. Part of me is thinking, what the actual hell? I still lived with my parents at the time, and I'm in my mid-20s on the brink of waking them up. I was honestly that scared. I got the wits about me and eventually went to the toilet. Pillow not there. I couldn't find it, so I went downstairs and made some coffee. I sat in the living room not knowing what to do, who to call ... it, quote, S, like 4 a.m. I must have fallen asleep on the couch. My dad woke me up. Asked why I was in the living room. I didn't know WTF to say so. I just said I couldn't sleep and got up through the night. It was light outside. I went back upstairs and fell asleep. Woke up with my mother in my room. She found my pillow in the garden. Did I throw it out of the window? My window faced the garden, sure. It's possible, it's highly likely, it's the only sane explanation. Window was closed when I went to bed and closed when I woke up, so who knows? I can only speculate. I had many similar experiences during this particular bout, which was really aggressive and intense. This phase ended with a very strange episode, another waking dream where I'm lying in bed. I heard a crunch, followed by that inner head buzz and sensation. But the crunch was coming from a distinct part of my room, lower corner. I could pinpoint it precisely, and I know right away, this is a dream. So I immediately start trying to move. No dice. The crunching moves from one corner to the other, more intense and loud. The sensation's getting more intense, like I'm going to burst. Suddenly the crunching leaps, mid-crunch, from an external part of the room to right inside my head, and the sensation is both beautiful and terrifying. Should I let go? I can't. I start struggling to wake up. The crunch I'd liken to someone shaking a box of matches in your ear. I start trying hard to kick my legs and I hear the shuffling. The crunching continues. I'm on my stomach and trying hard to kick my leg back, suddenly become very aware of a weight on my legs, like something is pushing them down. I panic more and try harder, and finally my leg flexes back. The relief is short-lived because then I hear the loudest crash and, still semi-paralyzed, jump out of bed, barely got control of my limbs, and I fall to the floor, weak. To my horror, I look up and see a drawer on the floor. It was on top of my legs, on my bed. That was what the weight was. It's important to note that my parents had literally left the day before for a 2 weeks holiday, and I had the house all to myself. Oh, joy! I got dressed and left the house before it was even light outside. Went to a friend's place where I stayed until my parents returned. Did I sleepwalk and remove a drawer from my chest of drawers, put it on my bed, then get into bed, sliding my legs under it without knocking it onto the floor? This terrified me, because I've slept-walked before. This was the last episode for about a year or so, Phase 3, chasing the experience. So I did a lot of research, read a lot, and I started to want to figure out WTF was really going on. I wanted answers, and I wanted to induce it, but was never able to. One night I was half asleep and felt the crunching very gently, distant, but I couldn't quite catch it, couldn't quite capitalize on it. It's as though wanting it to happen made it less potent. This happened a few times, almost, but no cigar. I eventually gave up and tried to forget about it. And yeah, bam! It came back and ramped up again. Waking dream, I wake up, thirsty, hot, no fear, everything seems real and normal, so I get up and head downstairs to the kitchen, which is right next door to the living room. As I head for the kitchen, I notice soft talking coming from the living room. I open the door and people are there. I can't remember how many, I don't know who they are. It's the same living room, but the lighting is strange. They're drinking. They acknowledge me like I know them. I don't. But I'm not fearful or even confused. They seem warm and friendly and invite me in. They're having conversations. There's smoke in the air. One offers me a drink, which I decline. I need a glass of water, I tell them. Getting up to go into the kitchen, a dude who looks a bit like Clark Gable tries to stop me. Have a glass instead. He's not rude or aggressive, more a passive suggestion. I decline and head for the kitchen. I open the kitchen door and the light is already on. Two men in black suits stand at the far end next to the sink just as the window. As soon as I see them, I freeze and I know they are not good. They both stop talking and immediately turn to face me. I freeze. One points at me and I start to levitate. The kitchen becomes stretched, elongated, and they suddenly look like they're miles away. They start to spin me around in mid-air using their finger to direct my path. The spinning creates the same sensations as the crunching, and it's super intense. They eventually direct me back into my living room, which is now empty, and I fall onto the floor. I'm now alone and in darkness. I walk over to the window and look into the back garden. The people from the living room are now out there in a circle and doing some weird chant or something. I've no idea. I become super creeped out and then wake up. I can't move. Great. I immediately start trying to free myself. This feels worse than usual. Noises everywhere. I hear sighs, groans, shuffling, scraping, cracking. All have a strange echo and all generate some internal buzz or sensation. I eventually wake up. I'm not in my bed. I'm in the living room. Must have slept-walked. It was dark. I was confused and terrified and lay there as still as I could for a long time until I got the balls to get up and go back to bed. This was another episode. I was familiar with this now and made myself a promise that next time it happened, I'd just go with it, sink or swim. I wanted to know what would happen if I didn't fight it. I got my chance a week or so later, and I knew it was going to happen that night before I even fell asleep, no idea why. Even before I fell asleep, I could feel it, hear it, albeit very distant. I tried to settle and let it build. It came as always with waves of internal cracking, rattling, crunch, crunch. I started to lose consciousness, and eventually I was dreaming. Nothing remarkable at first, but not a comfortable sleep, semi-awake in anticipation and apprehension. Next thing, I'm very aware that something is circling my location from a distance. I'm talking miles away. I know this because I'm experiencing it. I'm both in my bed and outside in the dark, flying in a huge, wide circle around myself. There's a dual nature to it. The me in bed knows that whatever I am circling my position and closing in, moving in a spiral, getting closer with each revolution. In bed, me goes into full panic mode because I know something is coming for me. I can see and experience its journey through its eyes. It literally screams through the dark night as it circles and spirals ever closer. And I chicken out. I know whatever it is not good. By now, this is like a build-up or crescendo of noises and sensations, visuals and terror. My mind is telling me to wake up and secure your property. You don't want this in your house. I start to fight, usual leg movements being my get zero out clause. I can still feel it build and get closer. I eventually manage to snap out of it and jump out of bed, but my limbs are like jelly. I flop onto the laminate flooring like a sack of raw meat and lay there twitching, trying to regain control of my limbs and extremities. The feelings slowly subside, and I hear a crackling voice echo in my head. We almost had you, clear as a bell. It was here I decided that whatever I was trying to discover or figure out was probably best left alone. That was my last episode, and I had a real desire to experience more. A few small episodes followed, less intense. I became accustomed to the point I was lying there, unable to move. But knowing full well what it was, my go-to was to try and move my legs, bend a knee, wiggle a toe, and it usually brought me out of it. I'd spot the signs and prevent it, or I'd bring myself out of it. Nothing as terrifying as that night where I honestly thought something evil was coming to kill me. I occasionally will hear the crunching noise, but it's distant. like it's lost its potency, and I can never quite grasp it. I kind of miss that and often find myself trying to hang on to it for a minute, just to go back. Just the sound and sensations on their own would be nice, but I can never fully monopolize on it. It always eludes me now.
I've experienced sleep paralysis countless times, along with the whole shadow people whispering thing, though it got to the point where I could notice it when the feeling of unease hits and breaks out fairly easily, leading to fewer and fewer encounters. But one that always struck me was this time it hit in the morning when I'd overslept and it was light outside. The figure was actually red this time, not black, and instead of harsh whispers it spoke in a deep, almost robotic voice telling me that I was witnessing a hallucination and should go back to sleep. Of course I woke up anyway and it was gone. I'm still not inclined to think it's paranormal, but what's really weird is that in the past few months since I've moved in with my GF, I haven't had it happen once. It's like the best way to prevent it is to have someone else in the room, and the implications of that are rather disturbing.
Mine first started in college. I would come home and nap on the couch. I'd get a really weird dizzy sensation in my head and the loud buzzing in my ears when I tried to sit up. Didn't think much of it until the first time it happened while I was dreaming. I thought I was driving my car and for some reason reclined the seat so that I was just staring up. I could see a little of the sky out the window next to me and it was gray and cloudy. I was panicking because I was going to crash, but couldn't move. When I came out of it, I realized that my eyes had been open and I was staring at the ceiling. The sky I saw was actually the wall next to my bed, which was painted gray at the time. Another time I was laying with my head turned toward my computer chair, and I thought the literal Grim Reaper was sitting next to my bed. It was actually just a pile of clothes and a hoodie thrown over the back of the chair. The only time I remember seeing a shadow man was maybe a year ago. I saw a shadow standing at the end of the bed on my wife's side. For some reason I thought he looked like a soldier from like World War II or something, so in my head I was thinking, ghost. I closed my eyes and opened them and he was still there, but he was just a shadow now. I closed my eyes again, but this time when I opened them he was on my side, leaning over me with his face right above mine. It pretty much looked like the pic. After the first couple times I realized that it had to be sleep paralysis. I didn't really know what it was, but I used to like watching UFO shows when I was younger, and I remembered hearing the term. It's a common explanation for people who think they were abducted. That's an irrational fear of mine, so thankfully I've never had that hallucination because I don't know if I could handle that. But the most terrifying experience was when I was living with a couple friends about 6 or 7 years ago. There was a window in my room that was the same height as my bed. I woke up on my side, which was unusual because it normally happens laying on your back. I was looking out the window with my back to the bedroom door. I was way more awake and aware of the fact that I was having sleep paralysis, which was also unusual. All I could do was look out the window at the little bit of light from the street lamp. I started panicking really bad because I thought I was going to see something looking through the window at me. I could hear myself breathing and it sounded horrible. I had to have been hyperventilating. This went on way longer than any other episode I've ever had, and I didn't hallucinate anything. But after a while I felt the presence standing in the doorway behind me. I was 100% convinced that something was in my room, but I couldn't turn to see. That one was scary.
I have 3 main characters or entities that appear during my sleep paralysis. They all act and look very different. I will go in order from least unnerving to most. The first one is a man in a suit. I have never seen his face, but I know that it is masculine by its figure. It has never once moved. I have never heard it walk. Always in the corner of my room or standing still in the shadow of my reach-in closet. This is the least unnerving of the 3. A feeling of initial panic and slight nervousness is felt, and I usually wake up soon after spotting him. He's usually not seen when in full sleep paralysis, as in he often appears when I have some control or manipulation over the dream, like movement of my body and the ability to talk. The second entity is that of a mischievous child. Again, I have never seen his face, but if I were to guess, he resides between the ages of 10 to 14. He appears usually when I am in sleep paralysis and I'm only able to look around. I can often hear him walking in the hallway and jiggling door handles. Sometimes he jumps on top of me, often jamming things in my ear, not physically hurting, but the scraping sound like loudly rubbing a Q-tip is present. I have no control of my dream when he appears, and I am only able to hear and move my eyes. Movement/manipulation of my body is not possible. The third, and absolute worst, is a shadow-hooded figure. I'm not sure if I have ever even seen this entity. Usually a silhouette on the wall, sometimes existing in my peripheral, or I can feel it directly behind me. This entity is able to fully manipulate the movement of my body. It will often make me float above my bed. He can spin me, float me down to the ground, push me around, and sometimes forces me to watch scenes unfolding in my house. A loud, buzzing electric sound is often heard, like cicadas in the background.
I have many experiences about this topic. Many of them would make sense if I typed them out because I don't have the best vocabulary to be able to articulate exactly, with the emotion of the feeling and the detail. But I will tell you all one. But, before you all read this, I need you to know this wasn't a dream. This wasn't a hallucination. I was 100% conscious. Please excuse any misspelling. I will do my best to come back and edit or redo it or whatever, answer any kind of questions, but I'm going to be using my talk texting so I can get this down faster so I don't have to type and this ends up taking forever. Anyway, here it goes. One morning I was up the whole night before, so I was pretty tired. Being tired will often bring sleep paralysis on. But don't get it wrong, I wasn't awake for days where I was like sleep deprived or delirious. It was just like time to go to sleep. I had a friend over and he passed out next to me. He was done for. I laid down and was just staring at the ceiling. I had my knees up and the blanket over my legs. I heard my phone beep. There was a text message. I tried to sit up and my body was just not moving. I was stuck. I was like, WTF, am I dead? So I tried to move my head from left to right and I couldn't, and then I tried to move my knees and saw my knees kind of move. So then I knew I was in sleep paralysis. So I decided to experiment with it because I was fully conscious. So then I put my hands in front of my face and waved them in front of my face with my fingers open. Wait, what the hell? My hands were still on my chest folded, but I'm waving my hands in front of my face at the same exact time? The hell? Wait, am I like dead or locked in syndrome? So I can see my hands, my arms folded on my body while I am waving my arms in front of my face. But it gets more weird, that when I waved my arms and fingers around I could see them, but they were transparent, and when I would stop moving they would disappear completely and I couldn't see them anymore. But I could feel my arms out in front of me. I could feel that I was reaching out in front of me like normal. So then I'm still experimenting, and I start to interlock my fingers as if I'm going to crack my knuckles backwards, and in the same instance a humanoid figure like creepy crawled, scurried from the direction of my right shoulder, like right to side of my face and head. Just like my arms, I could only see it when it moved, and when it did that it grabbed my right hand with its teeth and bit me, and stayed like that for like 10 seconds, and I pulled my hand away and I don't know why, but I wanted to see or catch it. I was thinking maybe I would never get a chance like this again or experience like this again. I then grabbed the back of its head, and when I grabbed it, and it turned and looked at me. It had a flat face and large dark eyes. I don't remember seeing a nose in the back of its neck. I describe it as a pit bull when I tell this story. A dog with short hair. I saw it when it ran across my body and felt its body on mine. I could only see it when it moved. It had long skinny arms and legs and moved like an ape or some kind of primate. When it would stop moving it would disappear, but when it moved it was transparent like my arms and hands were. I let it go after like 2 or 3 seconds. After it bit me for 2 or 3 seconds, then grabbed it, then let it go. Then when it was scurrying away from me I grabbed its arm and it instantly with zero give its arm just comes off from its shoulder. I'm holding it by the wrist and I see its elbow bend and I throw the shit away from me, only then I start to freak out. I saw it peek at me from behind my legs that were still up and under my blanket, and I was in complete sleep paralysis and complete consciousness the entire time of this experience. I started to try to get out of the sleep paralysis and I started to panic and cry for my friend. I was trying to scream and get my friend who was next to me the entire time attention, and he was asleep and obvious to the whole incident. My screams are only coming out as moans. My mouth was closed shut and I couldn't do anything to change that. I was so anxious and scared. Finally he heard me, and with my teeth clenched and my lips sealed shut, I was able to mutter the word "shake me." And he did, and I came out of it instantly. He told me my eyes were shut and my mouth shut when he started to shake me, and I'm wondering how I was 100% conscious and saw everything I saw with my eyes shut. I have a number of stories like this, but this is the only one with some kind of demon or other dimensional being part of it. Some I am conscious the whole time, some I start out conscious and then enter the dream world. Sometimes I get out of my body and I walk around. This hasn't happened to me in a long time, but when it did, it was only in 2 different apartments I lived in. I don't know if any of that has anything to do with anything, but there's my story, and I promise you this is 100% true. This isn't a joke. This isn't a fairy tale or a dream. I'm telling you I was 100% conscious. I was locked in my body with only my thoughts.
Be me. Probably early teens at the time. Sleeping over at my cousin's house. Fun day together with nothing eventful and time for bed. Cousins go to bed in their room and I sleep on the couch. I wake up in the middle of the night. I can't move, can't breathe, can't talk. The entire side of the room is pitch black, the darkest black I've ever seen in my life at this point. It looks as if there is a wall of darkness, almost like smoke creeping towards me. It begins to steadily creep closer to me. It creates this inhuman low-pitched moaning or growl. I'm terrified beyond belief. Finally, right as it's in front of me, I'm able to move again. Wall disappears and I stand up. I go to my cousin's room. Tell her I have a bad dream and I'd like to sleep with her tonight. To my surprise, she's just like, okay, no problem, and lets me get in. Surprised because she was older than me and I thought it'd seem childish to her. I found out a few years later from talking to her that she experienced the same thing I have numerous times. We have both had numerous paranormal experiences, together and individually, since then. That was my first time experiencing sleep paralysis.
I was home alone. The thing is, I often get paranoid when I'm home alone. Sometimes I check every room in the house when I come back from somewhere. I went to sleep and woke up at some point. I don't remember what time it was. I remember seeing my wall and my door wide open. I could hear someone doing something in my parents' room, but I couldn't move. I heard that someone did things around the house for some time, paralyzed and scared. Eventually, I fell back asleep. Naturally, when I woke up, there were no signs of anyone doing anything and my door was closed. I have a dog too, so she'd bark if anyone even approached the house.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup,